Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, October 18th, 11 days before the election. So if you haven't made your reservations to Portugal, you better get on that soon. It looks like a toss-up everywhere, all seven states. And the only good thing I can say about that, if it is in fact a 1% election, they always say that the last 1% is effort. And I think Kamala Harris has a better on the ground organization. So take that for what you will. Next week, we'll have a couple special election shows on Monday, which will air. Congressman Salute Carbajal will be with us, and I'll be asking him to talk us off the ledge. And then on Tuesday, listen to this, Nick, you'll love this. We have a 2-on-2 debate over Measure P, the community college bonds. Dale Francisco and Marsha Croninger match up against Lanny Ebenstein and Wade Cooper. Now, if that's
You
not
need
one
one of
for
those
you,
Oh, wow.
posters.
Wow.
yeah, and I'm gonna wear like a Don King wig or something like that.
Oh,
But
that.
in any case, we are pleased. I think historic first time we've had all independent all the time panel with us. Margaux Lovely from our IV Bureau while her car is being towed. Margaux, thanks for joining us. Callie Fausey and Ryan P. Cruz from the downtown global headquarters next to IHOP of the Independent and batting cleanup. Nick Welsh, executive editor, who shockingly won the Best Columnist Award. A little like the Harlem Globe Trotters playing the Washington Generals for those of a certain age, but that's enough snark for that. All right, Margo, let's start with you. We actually have a little bit of good news, which is good, but I do want to say journalistically, studies have shown that whether readers stay with a story or not depends on the first 5 to 7 words of your story. And yours on IV safety began standing next to the beer pong table and barbecue. So I think everybody probably went with that one. But it's 1 year after Supervisor Laura Capps began her crusade. Actually, a couple of students who were friends of Benny Shermer, who fell off and tragically died in a fall from the bluffs. A safety campaign in IV. What's the status of that, Margot?
Well, Jerry, it sounds like it's going really well. They have lots of things in place to kind of keep moving things along. They're looking at higher fences. They're looking at putting more restrooms on Del Playa, as a lot of people tend to jump a fence to use the restroom in a crowded place. They have kind of aggressive horticulture is what they're calling it. So very, very prickly, aggressive
Yeah, I
plants that make
wondered
you
what
not.
I wondered what aggressive horticulture was.
Yeah, and frankly, it looks awfully aggressive. I would not, get in a brawl with those plants, that's for sure. But by all standards, it's looking good. And then you have the private property managers kind of taking advantage of CAPS's office's promises to waive the fees for building higher fences on those decks. And so, we were strategically located at the first property to do so. And their fence is tall. You can still see the ocean, which I know was a big concern kind of going into it, that you might miss those ocean views if you raised a fence to 6 feet high. And they did it well. So it's looking good.
Yeah, the one thing I did notice is that if my math is correct, only 9 property owners in IV have taken advantage of this or have done the responsible thing. And I guess we want to shout out to Utopia Property Management, which was the first, but 66 have not. What's going on? I mean, I guess the county can't force them to do it because it's private property.
Exactly. That's kind of the point. And like I said, there's other concerns, around it. It's, can we still see the ocean? A lot of these people, get to make these rents really high, and they get to, pack a lot of kids in those properties because they have these gorgeous ocean views. And so the question of raising a fence 6 feet high on, my private property, um, puts a lot of property owners kind of in a mental gridlock.
Yeah.
You
Uh,
never think it's going to happen on your property until it does.
Yeah.
on that one, how much are they balking because they're worried about the coastal commission? If you build a fence a certain height, that then it's going to trigger a coastal commission review.
Some people are concerned about that. I think the coastal commission really only comes in during those construction periods, is what I've seen. So for those 9 properties they're kind of making movement on this, the coastal commission only comes in when they're, you know, building coastally and they're, dumping stuff on the beach and they're not cleaning it up, or they're, there's kind of
Triggers.
other triggers and other consequences of building a higher fence that aren't necessarily just building the higher fence. It sounds like the coastal commission's kind of, working with the county a little bit on that one and letting that slide, as long as they're not dumping, construction fragments on the beach, or, that type of thing.
So there have not been any fatal falls since Benny in what, December, was that December of 2023, or it was in 2023, I know.
So there was another fall a few months ago. I think it was towards the end of the last school year, like on Gaucho reunion weekend. So there was an alumni
I blame
fell.
Jimmy Spurlock for that.
So an alumni fell then, and that was definitely tough for people to see. He was 22, 23, fresh out of school, just coming back for the weekend to hang out, see some old friends. So it just kind of proved the point, that
was that a fatal fall? Did I miss
it
that?
was, yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay. All right.
Um,
I did
so
miss.
now we're at 14 in the past 20 years. Those aren't great numbers. That's, one-ish every year, maybe every
One
other
and a half.
year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it just keeps escalating, I feel like. But the safety measures are good. People aren't climbing over fences, they're not getting close to the cliffs. It's hard to fall off of them.
And then I think the other point that jumped out at me in your story was that this settlement that the university gave the county for not building any housing, that the money for this safety program is coming out of that, correct?
That is correct, at least for certain parts of it. So there's, $3.7 million that UCSB had to settle with the county for not delivering on their promises to build more housing for students. And so I think a lot of that, or part of that money, will kind of come into play here. And it sounds like a big portion of that will go towards making a permanent public restroom on Del Playa, instead of, I think they have 4 porta potties right now, which actually have gotten some good positive reviews. I think people kind of like having those
Have 5 stars on those, or
that's what the rumor has. I have never used one myself, but from the users of the porta potties, it sounds like, they're they're
well,
definitely high up on the ranking.
well, there's a headline for tomorrow's column. Okay. Well, Margaux, and meanwhile, you look like a recruiting brochure for UCS itself. We got the palm trees going in the back. Do you have an ocean view?
I don't. If I did, I would turn you around and show you. I'm a few streets up at the moment. I have a grass view and I have a beer pong table view, Jerry.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right, Nick, long ago in the before times, the morning paper did a reader survey about what endorsements mattered in elections, and at that time, the paper formerly printed in the morning was tied, basically within the margin of error, with the Independent, which surprised all of us, and so. I think this has continued, and if anything, the Indies endorsements have only grown more influential for people that don't, follow this stuff as closely as we do. They look to it when they're going to cast their ballot. So your final of 3 installments came out this week, and of course it didn't surprise, I think, anyone that you endorsed incumbents Oscar Gutierrez and Mike Jordan for council, but you took a duck in the first district. You didn't go for either Alejandra Gutierrez or Wendy Santa Maria. What was up with that?
We met with both of them for about 90 minutes. You know,
Wow,
I,
you got
I think with
overtime for that?
Alejandra Gutierrez, who's the incumbent, um, she we remain troubled by the high degree of absences and meetings that she's missed. And we don't want to get into, I've gotten a number of phone calls at home or email, texts at home. How dare you? Don't you have any sympathy or compassion? She had these health issues. And we're very mindful of those health issues and we're actually very compassionate about them. But there's been so many, and anecdotally, you keep hearing stories about meetings that she did not show up for way before she was even on the city council. And even when she was running the first time, we were hearing, you got to watch out because she's not going to be showing up. And, we've heard enough so that if 1/10 of them are true, that was, you got to, I think it was your line or maybe, can't remember, 90% of success is showing up.
I think it was actually Woody Allen, but
Oh, okay, yeah, you only bring up Woody Allen now, but that was a problem. And Wendy, I mean, it's interesting. Alejandra just seems like a person who is in, subjectively and significant. I don't know, anguish is probably not the right word, but she doesn't look like she's enjoying herself, and Wendy looks like she's probably enjoying herself too much. But I think it was Wendy. We were just more concerned that she was her persona and her experience as an activist, and pretty much the focus on rent control, rent control, rent control. There wasn't enough of a breadth. She's a relative recent arrival to Santa Barbara. She's a relative recent arrival to the district. And just that you're going to need somebody who is a real delicate touch in order to get something accomplished. And we like both of them personally, but
yeah, well, you know my feelings on this. I feel like people who have not had serious illnesses and stuff, it's just easier to, and I'm not certainly saying that of you, Nick, but the other thing I heard, I went to this damn women's event on Sunday she got very emotional in the endorsement process there. And what she said was it wasn't just she didn't want to talk about it. There's a cultural element to it that as a Latina, she felt very, very uncomfortable talking about. So, be that as it may, you're on your own in the first district if you're voting there. No guidance from the independent. Thank you very much. However, on a couple of other issues, of course, the independent has never found a ballot measure to spend other people's money it didn't like. So you went, I think, all yes on all of the ballot measures and all of the taxes everywhere. And, I didn't disagree with all of the one thing I take issue with a little bit is Prop 4, which is the quote unquote climate bond for $10 billion. That's a bunch of junk. It's a bunch of stuff that they tried to get through that they didn't want to pay for when they had $100 billion surplus up in Sacramento. So they threw it all in a bond, and the climate thing to me is just marketing and trying to brand it as something that it's not.
Well, you're not the first person to have said that. I think I don't know what we finally wrote, but when I wrote it, it was the endorsement. I refer to it as eco parks, and I kind of think that's what it is. But we need eco parks, and it's the process by which we got here isn't pretty. But at the end of the day, we need the parks, and we need the some of those projects and the funding for it. It's not surgical. There's some.
But my point is, they had $100 billion surplus. Why didn't they do this stuff then? No, they wait till they're in deficit again to 86 billion or whatever it is. Oh, now we got to have this bond money. It's just not good policy making.
No, I agree with you.
All right, and then I'm still trying to make up my mind on Prop I, the city sales tax increase. I'm going to vote against Prop H. I don't travel very much, but I got to tell you, you go on hotels.com, it says, oh, you can get this hotel room for $200. And then you check out, it's like $300, and it's all these little local charges. And, they're going to kill the golden goose with these things. But I do want to tell you, Prop 36, the crime thing, which is going to pass overwhelmingly, but you're saying no on it. Why?
We're saying no on that. You know what? Of all the types of measures that really should never be on a ballot are ones about crime. I mean, was it Prop 36? Wasn't Prop 36 the one that gave us 3 strikes back in '94? When people go to the ballot box with crime or anti-crime measures, they are never well written. They are very there's no suppleness, there's no discretion written in. And last time we did it, it just that contributed hugely to the overpopulation of California prisons, to the extent that the federal government had to come in and take receivership.
Which led to Prop 47.
And that led to Prop 47, and now we're going to go fix that with this. I've heard from enough mental health advocates. So here's one thing that'll happen. We're going to be putting more people into state prisons than we do now as a result of if this passes. And I agree with you, it probably will. And right now, the county of Santa Barbara and every county gets a big check every year for mental health and drug diversion programs that is based on the money saved from not taking people to the state prison. So if you have more people in state prison, you're going to have less savings, and there's going to be less money for those programs here. So that is just sort of a immediate, direct response and effect to Prop 36. We're going to have less money for those kinds of programs.
Yeah, no, and I take your point about, making laws about crime on the ballot, and it hasn't led to a lot of good things. I think in this case, those smash and grab robberies that we also videos of is just, I mean, that's what's going to swing it. And
that will swing it.
But I'm also persuaded by the fact that there's a lot of mayors in the state of California that are for this. It's an issue I think they have to deal with on the ground, that maybe the state gets a little more ivory tower about. All right, fair enough. And then Callie, on some of these school board, both the Unified School District and also the county board, which someday we'll all understand what it is the county board actually does. Did you have to sit in on all of those interviews, or you probably interviewed them separately anyway?
Yeah, I interviewed them separately. I mean, I didn't interview the county board. Santa Barbara Unified School Board is a handful in and of itself. So,
oh, we're texting you now. We're a wreck in the other room. Has Callie come in? No. Where is she?
Is that Marianne? Is that Marianne
Marianne.
Partridge as we live and breathe? Duck your head in here, my dear. No, I guess
She's back out.
back out.
She'll be
All right,
back.
well, let me go through these with you, because I think people do have questions. Now she's back. So the open seat
yeah, we're on there.
is in District 5, Callie. Celeste Caffrey versus Jason Lekis, if I'm pronouncing his name right. What? Break that one down for us, if you would. What do those two candidates sort of represent?
Well, Lakis didn't even respond, he didn't accept my interview. He said he had too much going on for an interview, and then kind of had the same excuse for not coming to our forum. So I honestly don't know too much about Jason Lakis except for what his website said, which he was like a banker and a businessman and a Christian camp counselor. So, do with that what you will. But
yeah, I think he's on the SB Currents slate. I think he's a James Finkner kind of guy. So he would be the conservative in that race. And then what?
Oh yeah, he's endorsed by the Republican Party. And yeah.
And then tell us about Celeste.
And Celeste is She feels pretty like new to, I guess, this kind of like scene, like the political scene, I guess you could say. But she's a very strong advocate for literacy and the science of reading. Um, she's kind of helped, push Goleta Unified forward to actually adopt the science of reading in some of its schools, and Goleta's seen, an improvement in reading scores ever since.
Is
So
she
she
a
is really
parent or a
about the
teacher,
background.
or is she either of those two categories?
I think she's a parent. She's a parent,
Yeah.
but I don't think she has children in Santa Barbara Unified there. Um, so like the District 5 is Goleta, so I think her kids are in GUSD still.
Okay, all right. But she's a science of reading candidate?
Oh yeah, yeah. Very
Okay.
And,
much.
and what they did there, they were very much about, okay, it's one thing to adopt these sort of broad objectives. Now you have to do the training, and now you have to do the work to make that actually real. And so she is pushing forward on that and she had sort of a history there. She said it took them about a year in Goleta to really make this happen. And she said, they learned after the first meeting that if they showed up with cookies, um, things went better. And 'cause-
Well,
so I think she may need to bring a lot of cookies.
yeah, my old friend Richie Ross, a political consultant in Sacramento, once told me the greatest people waste all this money on get out the vote. He just buys hundreds and thousands of donuts every year. Of course, that's when people didn't vote all by mail. And then in District 2, was Sunita Beal, and she's an appointed incumbent
Mhm.
versus John Roberts. Did you find anything out about him at all? Was he responsive?
Yeah, he seemed like a really nice, like competent guy. He, teaches English as a second language at Santa Barbara City College and UCSB. So, he has experience in the education field and also in as being a teacher in this field that Santa Barbara Unified is trying to improve because ESL, reading test scores are some of the lowest among its demographics. So, yeah, so he has like the experience, but
So he has credentials for the school board, yeah.
he has credentials. I don't know if he has the gumption, Like I think that Sunita Biel just has, I don't know, she has like a stake in it. I don't think that John Robertson ever had kids in Santa Barbara Unified and definitely doesn't now. And Sunita just had two high schoolers graduate from the school district, and she just has a lot of I guess like a lot of spirit. She asks really good questions. She has a really good head on her shoulders, and her responses in the forum really prove that. So
And I think the literacy people like her too, don't they?
Yeah.
yeah, she and Celeste actually are like buddy buddy, and they've been like collaborating on that. They sent me like a joint email about, following up about Santa Barbara Unified Science of Reading implementation and comparing it to other school districts, and I'm going to start working on that soon.
All right, and then in District 3, we have Bill Banning, who's basically a retired educator, also, I think, was appointed by the board against Chris Wachowski, who's a teacher, if I'm not mistaken. Is he backed by the teachers union? He is. Okay, so that's one of the places where they decided to play. And then Phyllis Cohn, who is she's the conservative in the race, if I got that right.
Hmm. Yeah.
And what do you met with Wachowski? What's his story?
I like Chris. He's a really nice person and he really cares. Like you can tell that he's very passionate about education and about helping children in any way that he can and like expanding what public education can be. Like he was a very strong advocate for this guitar building program that he started at San Marcos that turned out some really cool looking instruments and gave kids like a something to do with their hands that wasn't like texting or scrolling social media, I guess.
Right.
Saying it taught them physics and it's teaching them music all in the same time. So he's really passionate about education. um and he's backed by the teachers union. He really wants to include the voices of teachers. If he were to sit on the board, but he just, I don't know, he came across very I kind of aggressive during the forum, like definitely very outspoken, but maybe like pushing a little too much. It's like, well, how would this play out on the actual
And then did Phyllis Cohn contact you, or she thinks you're fake news too?
No, she was really nice too. She just I think she's nice. She's a good educator. And she has a lot of experience in education. She just has views that we do not agree with, especially on like teaching students or like letting students have access to LGBTQ stories in schools and banned books and all of that. She called it what was the word, Ryan?
She said American children were being indoctrinated
by those kinds of stories. And she also called them pornography, which we don't really stand by.
Yeah.
So
And then Nick, you went with banning in this one, and it sounded like you wrestled with it a little bit about Wachowski, but I can't remember what the line was, but it's you were sort of suggesting he switched to decaf.
Yeah. No, I mean, Wachowski, he was very compelling. Of all he gave you, when you hear him talk, he has the most specific things. This is what it's like to be a teacher. This is what it's like to be in the classroom. And it's like all the catch-22 frustrations and exasperation that teachers experience, he feels them very intensely. And he has sort of like this, like, it's not quite a nothing can be done attitude, but they're going to screw it up and they're going to stop you. And good ideas, the school board is where good ideas go to die. And he's going to try to help turn that around. And he brings this intensity that, like, if you bring it down a bit, and then you have Banning on the other side, who has like this amazing resume, right? He has done everything you could do, but you can't.
He was a superintendent in Goleta, wasn't he?
Yeah, but you need a crowbar to get like an opinion out of his mouth. What do you think about anything? It's really frustrating. And so I was personally, if I was very torn on our endorsement about that one.
Yeah. Well, as a political, go ahead, Kelly.
I think if the board seems like it's like flatlining, then Wachowski would be the spark. A lot of people have complained that it doesn't seem like the board has enough like actual dissent among them. It's like ducklings in tow behind the superintendent, and I think that Wachowski would add that bit of like debate and like, I don't know, critical thinking, and kind of like disrupt the sort of like smooth waters that we've seen over the past year.
Elder will love that.
At the very least, it would be interesting, and I think that it would I don't know, like just kind of disrupt that monotony.
Yeah.
The teachers are walking.
That's what I'm picking up. He's got a good chance.
Yeah. I mean, I came home and there was something on my doorknob, that they stopped by and.
Yeah, I've heard from just people working on campaigns. They don't really. I mean, Banning's all but invisible, and this other guy's out there. I mean, so he's working it. So we'll see what happens. Yeah. All right, good enough. The only county board one I want to mention is two things. One, I was not aware that William U. Joe Howell is retiring from the county board after 200 years on there or something like that. So that's an open seat. But the District 2 seat, where our old friend Christy Lozano is running, you endorse Nadra Emin, if I'm pronouncing it right.
Emin, yeah.
Yeah, who she replaced Peter McDougal, as I recall. She was appointed. What was your thinking there?
Well, Christy Lozano is sort of Joan of Arc of the cultural right, very aggrieved, and they're out there training our students, they're grooming our students, and she is an anguished soul, and very on, I would say, a bit on the fringes of where most people are in Santa Barbara. And Nadra is, she just is she worked for years for Michael Tobes and property management. Then she sort of became their sustainability expert. She's on the board of the Community Environmental Council, and she was involved most recently in the State Street Advisory Committee, the one that took 3 years to kind of figure out what it wanted to do. But from what I heard from people who were working there, is that she showed up, she was prepared, she knew what she was talking about, she had ideas, she had questions, and she moved the conversation forward.
All
So
right.
for us, it seemed like a pretty easy one.
That was an easy one. All right. Well, speaking of anguished souls, Ryan, you you covered this big housing I don't know, workshop on community meet. I'm not sure what it was, but it sounded like about 100 people altogether, including those on Zoom. And it was what? It was an attempt to bring the stakeholders, as I like to call them, all together and try to figure out a way forward. What was the purpose of the meeting?
It was an interesting meeting. It was a recap of the work of the ad hoc housing crisis subcommittee, which, we call it the Housing Crisis Task Force. And they've been meeting with these groups for, a couple months now. And it was kind of a recap of what they've been doing, what kind of programs they think that could go forward, that could help tackle this crisis. And let's get everybody in the room and see what they think about these programs we came up with. They let all these groups meet up in their different tables. And of course, tenants were sitting with tenants, landlords or housing providers, as they prefer to be identified as, were sitting on their own table. And then you had nonprofits at another table, community organizations. So it was really ambitious to, at least get everybody in the same room. They weren't, I think it was by design, they weren't at the same table, because I don't know how much during the small group discussion, a limited discussion, how much it would have turned into arguments all over. I think at the end, we didn't learn anything new. Landlords, they want more incentives. They want subsidized housing, city to pay for housing. They would like the city to pay for rents through other programs. They say, if the rents are too high, maybe the city should subsidize some of those rents. Now, that's not a new opinion for landlords and tenants. Of course, they were ringing the bell for rent stabilization, or rent control, as it used to be known, and a rental registry, which are two things that have kind of been pushed as a way to kind of get a handle on this crisis right now. And we always hear the tenants on the side of, we need this to help in the short term, and we hear that the landlords say, they bring their papers from The Economist and, say in Argentina it didn't work. And, they have all these arguments of where it didn't work, but we really haven't seen how it would play out here. And we're really in a pretty bad crisis right now. I mean, a lot of people,
What'd you say the average rent was in your piece? I forget what the number.
It's over 2,000 for a 1-bedroom, and a 2-bedroom, it's over 4,000. And that's, for people making most people in Santa Barbara making less than $100,000, that's really a big chunk of your paycheck going straight to rent. So, I think that the thing we heard, Rob Fredericks, the director of the Housing Authority, he put it pretty bluntly, like, rent control might not, or rent stabilization, whatever you want to call it, might not be the best thing in the long term. It might, we don't know, it might make rents go up, but rents are going up anyway. I mean, rents are going to go up in Santa Barbara. We don't know what to do in the short term, and that is one tool we can. And I think Kristen Sneddon, she really, really, stood on, and Oscar as well. They both took the opportunity at the end, and she was speaking as herself, not for the council, but she was saying, we've heard over and over again from the community what they want. It's time to do it. It's time to just, let's bring it across again. So, the city council still technically, last time the vote was 4-3. They'll come back across with their findings from this meeting, and, kind of the priorities the different stakeholders wanted, and they'll talk with city council about where to go from here. And I think the big question will be this rent registry and rent stabilization. Will this be part of it going forward?
Yeah, well, clarify this for me, because Nick, you guys went no on Prop 33, which would authorize locals to have a much more control over rent control. So if that fails, as the independent wants it to, does that mean that these rent stabilization proposals can't go forward?
Well, it would be for newer properties, new construction, and that's the basis of the Costa Hawkins Act. And I think if you read our endorsement, we're of many minds in the newsroom of rent control, and just like the city, of how it would work out, how it would play out. And I don't envy the people that have to make these decisions, but I think sitting in these meetings and going to talk with people over and over in the community like I do, it's a majority of people that are renters, and a majority of renters would support this. And if constituents support this, I think city council has to take that into account and take it seriously. Now, whether that is the best choice, and that's for everybody else to argue. But I think what Kristen Sneddon said and Oscar, they've heard enough from people on the ground that it needs to be taken seriously as an option. I think there's going to be lots of arguments, the economist point of view of what happens in the long term, but we still haven't seen how it would play out here, and it might be worth a chance now.
Just to jump in on a point you were making there, because we hear a lot about how the economists say that there's nothing worse, than an atom bomb, except for rent control on, the fortunes of a city. I think the Harvard Business Review just issued a major article saying rent control might be strong medicine, but it actually makes a lot of sense. And if you look at rent control, it isn't the unmitigated disaster that we are often told.
Now, are you subscribing to the Harvard Business Review?
No, I'm just, it's on my reading list.
But you made the opposite argument in the endorsement.
No, I didn't. Jerry, I was threading that needle.
Oh, you were finessing. Okay. Hey, Margaux, let me ask you, what's your, if I may, and you don't have to answer if you don't, what's your rent out there? What are you paying for how much apartment?
I share a room with one roommate, and I pay $1,200
$1,200. So it's 24
for a double room
for
the room.
Wow.
And that's probably on the
Correct.
low scale, Jerry.
And I think that is on the low scale.
If you're paying 2,000 nowadays and you lose that unit, you're most likely going to be looking for above 2,500 nowadays, and that's kind of unfortunate.
Callie, are you still paying 12,000 with 6 roommates or whatever it was you told me the last time when I had
It was 1,100 with like five roommates.
Wow.
But
How many bedrooms is that? 2 or 3 or?
that was 3. But I moved, and now my house is owned by my roommate's parents, and so we don't pay like as much as we would be if that wasn't
Maybe the city ought to look into that.
Literal mom and pop
a
landlord.
literal
Yeah.
yeah.
Literal. And then just a brief digression. Margaux, just to double back, we were talking about language and its uses at the beginning. I wonder if you were struck as I was in Ryan's story. Did it remind you of George Orwell, Politics and Language? We've somehow turned rent control into rent stabilization, and we've turned landlords into housing providers, which is it's right up there with gun control and gun safety, a way to make things more palatable, I guess. But anyway, that jumped out of me. And then finally, we got to get out of here. But Ryan, apparently City Hall has finally taken note that there are issues with bicyclists on State Street and is now proposing to do something. What's the latest?
So the basis of this is, we've heard it for a long time. We've seen the e-bikes, going, we got 2 kids on e-bikes, no helmets, and rolling around downtown. It depends on who you ask. Some people say they're just having fun. Some people have been dangerously ridden close to right by them. So, the city is taking it seriously, and they folded the e-bikes into the regular bicycle ordinance, kind of putting it all into one chapter and saying these e-bikes they're going to be covered under everything bicycles are going to be covered under. And the two big new things is they're going to be able to impound juveniles' bikes, which will, Chief Kelly Gordon said that this was more of a method to make sure that, if there's bad actors. She gave this example where on Fiesta, there was a group of teenagers that were riding their bikes, outside of unsafe, outside of what the law would allow. She went up and talked to them. And, most of them were receptive, they said, except one 15 or 16-year-old didn't enjoy what she had to say. She saw that group later that day, and that one kid was, in front of her, doing the same dangerous maneuvers. And she said that would be a occasion where she would want to impound the bike and talk to the kids' parents and make sure they know, what the laws are, what their kids are doing. And the other big thing is, the wheelie part of it, the wheelie and the group ride part, saying you can't ride more than 2 abreast. In Santa Barbara, we have these Fiesta Cruiser group rides, and, we have Michael Montenegro. He does his annual Chicano history mural ride. And those things, will be technically made illegal. But Chief Gordon also said, we're not going to go looking for group rides and doing that. It's more the spirit of the law. We don't want people riding in a bike lane three wide and taking up the whole lane. So I think that when it comes back to city council, that and the wheelie portion, which, it says wheelies aren't allowed anywhere technically. And I think some of the bike advocates, pointed out, well, can we add some language saying like, well, when people are close or when there's vehicles around, just to make it more clear that the city doesn't want to outlaw. There's a man, I think his name was Chuy Lopez. I'm sorry if I'm getting this wrong. And he would ride down State Street, riding a wheelie up and down State Street when I was a kid. And that would be made illegal. And it's kind of in our blood, I would say, having wheelies and people do tricks on
Well, I
bikes.
know Nick likes to do a lot of wheelies.
Nick is on his bike doing wheelies and bunny hops. So I think that part will get adjusted a little bit, just to make it clear that, they're not trying to go after everybody doing these acts. Like, it's not footloose. They don't want no wheelies, hopefully. But
Kristen Snedden.
I was surprised by the wheelies in there, because really early on in COVID, wheelies were an issue, but it has disappeared. I mean, when was the last time you see somebody on State Street trying to pop a wheelie? It's been a long time.
I see it every day.
Now,
I'm just gonna say,
Callie, thank you.
I bike to my second job, and there's always kids doing wheelies like every single time, or attempting to.
Okay, now where were they?
State Street.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I take
All
State
right.
One of the big developments also, just before I want to add this in, is those dirt bike things you see. They're called Surons. They look like dirt bikes. They're electric, and those are completely illegal on streets. They're private property only or off-road. So, Chief Gordon was asked about that. I think Oscar Gutierrez asked about those, and, police department said those are completely illegal. They shouldn't be on the streets anyway. So those are already, off, they're already prohibited. So I think what they're trying to do is get a handle on the e-bikes and really just, make sure they're riding with their helmets. They're riding one kid to a bike, and, obeying the rules. I think that's fair. I think freedom as a kid to have a bike and get out in Santa Barbara, you want to get out, but
Margaux, do you ride a bike?
I'm always on the bike.
Only
yeah.
wheelies. Only wheelies.
You must have a beach cruiser, Margaux. No?
I actually got rid of it this year, but I did use it for a few years. Yeah, it was great. It was rusty. It hardly worked, and it was perfect.
Yeah, well, that was kind of the highlight of my 4-year career out at UCSB, was cheating death every day as I try to get in between all the beach cruisers going to early class. All right, Margaux, what are you working on for next time?
Well, I've got a story coming out in 10 minutes, actually. It should be interesting. Following up on a standoff at Sunstone Winery that happened about a week ago.
Okay.
So subtle plug, definitely go read that.
All right.
Yeah.
And Nick, I appreciated your poodle list about the evil Elon Musk and his attempt to make even more trillions of dollars on the backs of Santa Barbara County from blasting all of his things off. Ryan and Callie, what are you guys working on?
I'm working on, I'm really excited to have a story come out next week. I think it's going to be on the cover, and I get to write a personal story about celebrating Dia de Muertos and making a ofrenda or altar to the dead, you know, and kind of going through that process. I had a few people recently that passed away in my family. So, you know, reconnecting with that and just, you know, telling people how to celebrate Dia de Muertos and some of the events we're going to have here in Santa Barbara.
Nice. Always, that's always a great thing at Adelante Charter too. They
Oh yeah, it's great they do it there.
wonderful event. Callie, what are you working on?
I'm working on a piece about phones again. So phone-free schools just passed by Governor Newsom, and I've been checking in with some of the schools to see exactly how they're going to address that. You know, we figured out that SBUSD was doing the cell hotels, but I wanted to get the other districts to weigh in as well.
All right, good. All right, well, Callie Fausey, Ryan P. Cruz, Nick Welsh, and Margaux Lovely, thank you all very much for taking the time to speak with Newsmakers today. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.
All right. We'll see you.